Breaking news! Ukraine's MiG-29s reborn to wipe out Russian troops. It is Saturday, January 24, 2026. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Aurea in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover a story that feels like it belongs in a cyberpunk novel, but is actually unfolding right now in the skies over Europe.
It really is. We're talking about how Ukraine has taken these Soviet-era MiG-29 airframes jets that, by all distinct metrics should be obsolete by 2026 standards.
Completely obsolete.
And turned them into these Frankenstein fighters.
Yeah.
They're capable of blinding modern Russian radars and launching advanced Western precision weapons.
And we are not just talking about a fresh coat of paint here. We are going to dig into the gritty engineering hacks that made this all possible. We're going to explain how Ukrainian pilots are bypassing these incompatible 40-year-old Soviet computers using consumer electronics.
You're talking about the iPads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
iPads. Right there in the cockpit to fire top-tier NATO missiles. We'll also break down the ghost weapon, the ABM-160 MAL-D, that is, right now, terrorizing Russian air defense operators by making them see phantom fleets. We'll introduce you to the pilot with the call sign Denfix, who is pushing these hacked jets to their absolute limit, intercepting targets at 2,400 kilometers per hour. And we'll explain the physics behind the special rail launchers that allow these smart bombs to talk to a dumb plane.
It really is a masterclass in adaptation, isn't it?
Right.
It challenges the whole traditional procurement model.
Completely.
I mean, usually getting a NATO missile to communicate with a Soviet avionics bus takes years of coding and millions of dollars. Ukraine, out of sheer necessity and just raw ingenuity, did it in weeks.
So let's start with that engineering reality, because I think a lot of people here, they added new missiles and assume it's like plugging a USB stick into a laptop.
Yeah, it's not.
But we are talking about the MiG-29. This is an airframe designed in the 1970s, built in the 80s. Its brain, the avionics suite, is largely analog.
Right. You have to set the scene.
Yeah.
In a modern Western fighter, everything is integrated. It's all connected via high-speed digital data buses. The radar talks to the mission computer, which talks to the missile on the wing. It's a seamless ecosystem.
But the MiG-29 doesn't have that ecosystem.
Not even close. The MiG-29s that Ukraine started the war with were built to speak a totally different language, literally and electronically. Different voltage standards, different connectors. They certainly don't run on code that understands GPS coordinates.
So what is the actual technical hurdle? What stops a modern American missile from just working on a Soviet wing?
It all comes down to architecture. Modern NATO weapons, like the ones we're talking about, they rely on a digital standard called MIL-STD 1760. They expect the plane to tell them exactly where they are in space.
GPS, speed, altitude.
All of it, before they even drop. The MiG-29's avionics just don't output that data in a format the missile can understand. It's like trying to plug a brand new 4K printer into a Commodore 64 from 1982.
That's a great analogy.
There's no port, and even if you soldered the wires together, the computer wouldn't know what a driver is.
So the plane physically cannot tell the missile, hey, here is the target.
Exactly. In a standard peacetime integration, you'd rip out the whole dashboard, replace the radar, rewrite all the source code, rewire the entire aircraft.
Which takes years.
Years. Ukraine didn't have that time. They needed these jets in the air immediately.
And this brings us to the solution that U.S. Undersecretary LaPlante revealed. He called it a MacGyver solution, which feels about right. They used iPads. Walk us through the mechanics of that. Is the iPad actually flying the missile?
Not flying it, but targeting it. This is the famous iPad hack. Since the jet's internal computer couldn't be reprogrammed to pass target data to the missile, they just bypassed the jet completely. They mounted commercial tablets in the cockpit. The pilot uses the tablet to get the target coordinates and the flight parameters.
So the pilot is operating two systems at once. The jet, with the old Soviet controls, and the weapon system using a touchscreen strapped to his leg.
Precisely, it's a parallel system. The tablet communicates, probably wirelessly or via a standalone cable, straight out to the pylon where the weapon is mounted. The jet becomes just a delivery vehicle.
Just to get it up there.
Exactly. The brain of the attack is the tablet and the missile itself. LaPlante said they were flying these configurations in combat about a week after getting the weapons. That speed is just unheard of.
That creates such a wild mental image. You're pulling Gs in a supersonic fighter, dodging SAMs, scanning for enemy jets, and you have to tap coordinates into a consumer tablet.
It's an incredible cognitive load, something Western pilots in, say, an F-35 just don't have to deal with. But the Ukrainians are making it work because they have to.
But software is only half the battle, right? You can't just duct tape a 500-pound JDAM to a wing.
No, absolutely not. The aerodynamic forces are immense. If a bomb comes loose, it could tear the wing off. This is where the hardware engineering comes in. The sources talk about integrating the JDAM.
For those who might not know, that's the Joint Direct Attack Munition Extended Range.
That's the one.
To break that down for us, what makes it extended range?
Okay, so a standard JDAM is a kit you strap onto a dumb bomb. Gives it a GPS brain and fins, but it still falls like a bomb. The ER version adds a set of pop-out wings.
Ah, like a glider.
Exactly. Those wings turn a bomb that might travel a few kilometers into a glider that can travel 70 or 80 kilometers. But to attach this American hardware to a Soviet pylon, Ukrainian engineers had to fabricate custom special rail launchers.
These are the physical adapters.
Yes, these adapters protrude from the standard Soviet mount points. They physically lock the American munition in place and, crucially, provide that electronic interface we talked about. The tablet likely signals the adapter to release the clamps.
A bridge between two eras.
It is. And it's not just the American JDAMs. We have to look at the French contribution to the AASM hammer.
Hammer, it sounds substantial. How's it different from the JDAM?
The JDAM is a glider. The ASM hammer is a hybrid. It's a bomb kit, but it has a rocket motor on the back.
So it's power.
It has a propulsion phase, yes. And this is significant because it gives the MiG-29s a standoff range of about 70 kilometers, similar to the JDAMer, but it can be launched from lower altitudes or tougher angles because of that rocket boost.
And why is that launch altitude so important?
Because flying high makes you visible. If you have to climb to 30,000 feet to toss a glider bomb, every Russian radar from Crimea to Belgorod sees you coming.
Right.
If you have a rocket motor, you can stay lower, pop up, fire, and then dive back down. This standoff capability is the most critical tactical change. It lets Ukrainian pilots release their payload without flying directly into the teeth of the Russian air defense network.
Which brings us to the environment they're in. I mean, this is arguably the most contested airspace on the planet. S-300s, S-400s.
Layers and layers of radar coverage.
If these MiGs were just flying standard sorties, they'd be shot down instantly. But they aren't just bringing bombs, they're bringing confusion. We have to talk about the ADM-160 MALD.
This is the real force multiplier. The ADM-160 MALD, which stands for Miniature Air Launched Decoy.
Okay.
To the naked eye, it looks like a small cruise missile. But inside, there's no warhead. It's packed with electronic warfare gear.
So it's a flying robot that just yells at radar?
In a sense, yes. It has a specialized payload that creates a radio frequency signature, an RF signature. Radar doesn't see a plane, it sees the radio waves bouncing back. The MALD can capture that signal and amplify or alter it to look like something else entirely.
So a Russian operator sees a blip and the signature tells him, that's a flight of F-16s, or that's a massive cruise missile strike.
Exactly. It creates ghosts.
Yeah.
Imagine the stress on that operator. His screen lights up with multiple high-threat targets coming from different directions.
Yeah.
He has seconds to decide.
What do I shoot at?
Does he turn on his fire control radar? If he does, he reveals his own location. Does he fire his expensive interceptors? If he does, he might be shooting at a cheap disposable decoy. It forces them to waste ammo and it creates gaps in their coverage.
And through those gaps?
Through those gaps, the real MiG-29s, or the Storm Shadow cruise missiles, slip right through. The MALL allows a 40-year-old MiG to perform a role we call air denial against a technologically superior enemy.
Air denial, that's a key concept here. Let's dig into that because the NATO lessons learned curriculum from this war highlights it heavily. What's the difference between air superiority and air denial?
Traditionally, major powers like the US or Russia aim for air superiority. You own the sky, you fly anywhere, anytime. On paper, Russia should have had that within a week of the invasion.
They had the numbers?
The numbers, the newer radars, everything, but they failed. Ukraine realized they couldn't dominate the sky in a symmetric fight, so they opted for air denial.
Which is basically, if we can't fly safely, then neither can you.
Precisely. It's guerrilla warfare in the atmosphere. They kept their air defense mobile, turning systems on and off. And for the Air Force, they used dispersal. They didn't park their jets in neat rows of big air bases. They moved them constantly.
The sources mentioned using highway strips?
Yes. Highway strips, small regional airports, they treat the jets like mobile artillery. Land on a highway, refuel, rearm, and move. It's a shell game. The Russians never know where the MiGs will launch from.
And speaking of tools for denial, we have to mention the HARM missile again.
The AGM-88 HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile, this is the predator that hunts the radar.
It is, and this was one of the very first integrations we saw. When a Russian S-400 battery turns on its radar, maybe to find one of those mauled decoys, it acts like a flashlight in a dark room.
It gives away its position.
And the HARM sensor sees that light, the radar emission, and it just rides that beam straight back to the source and destroys the antenna.
So the Russian operator has a dilemma. Turn on the radar and maybe get hit by a HARM, or keep the radar off and get hit by a JDAM. It creates paralysis. It suppresses their air defense and allows these Frankenfighters to operate in windows of opportunity that just wouldn't exist otherwise.
It's a terrifying game of cat and mouse, and it's not just about the machines, it's about the people inside them. We have to talk about the 40th Tactical Aviation Brigade.
The unit now known as the Ghost of Kyiv.
Right. And back in 2024, President Zelensky made that title official. It wasn't just an internet myth, it was a collective identity for the brigade. But the sources are very clear that this legend was built on real, heavy losses.
The cost has been incredibly high, and we have to be respectful of that. The sources highlight pilots like Lieutenant Colonel Vyacheslav Yurko. On the very first day of the invasion, he reportedly shot down 4 aircraft before he was killed.
Unbelievable.
Then you have Major Vladislav Savelyev,
Right.
call sign Nomad, and Andrei Pilchikov, Juice.
Juice. I remember his interviews. He was a huge advocate for getting F-16s.
He was instrumental. And Valentin Korenchuk, Beekeeper. These pilots flew vastly outmatched aircraft against Su-35s and paid the ultimate price. But their legacy continues. We have reports of a pilot active right now, call sign Denfix.
And Denfix seems to represent the evolution of the Ukrainian pilot. He's not just dogfighting, he's part of this complex digital system. The reports say he's pursuing targets at 2,400 kilometers per hour. That's Mach 2 territory.
It is. And he's credited with over 20 targets destroyed. But what stands out to me is the nature of those targets. He's intercepting kamikaze drones, the Shaheds, with air-to-air missiles.
Why is that so difficult? A drone is slow, a jet is fast. Shouldn't that be easy?
It's actually harder. The closing speed is massive.
Yeah.
You are screaming in, trying to hit a lawnmower-sized plastic object moving at 100 miles an hour. Your radar might struggle to even lock on. You have a split-second launch window. It requires just immense skill.
It really highlights a clash of philosophies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The rigid Russian hierarchy versus this adaptable, almost improvisational ingenuity from Ukraine. Looking forward, though, it's 2026. What's the long-term plan? They can't keep patching up these MiGs forever.
No, and they know that. Their Air Force Vision 2035 document is the roadmap. The goal is to move away from the Soviet past. The airframes are physically exhausted, so they're transitioning to a mixed fleet. F-16s and French Mirage 2000s are now in the mix, flying alongside these modified MiGs.
So it's not a full replacement yet, it's an integration?
Exactly. The Western jets, the F-16s, they have native compatibility with all these weapons, no iPad hack needed, so they can take on the primary roles. But the upgraded MiGs are still dangerous. They act as bomb trucks or brawlers, adding mass to the fight.
There was also a phrase in that vision document that stuck out to me. It didn't just list specs, it talked about the ethos. It mentioned relying on people in love with the sky.
That's a powerful sentiment. It lists courage and decisions as an asymmetric advantage. The doctrine suggests a motivated pilot with a tablet and a hacked jet is more dangerous than a demoralized pilot in a 5th-gen fighter who's afraid to deviate from rigid orders.
So it's about the warfighter, not just the hardware.
Absolutely. The value is on cognitive flexibility.
People in love with the sky. It really reframes the whole conflict. So, let's bring this all together. Ukraine has taken the MiG-29, a museum piece, and revitalized it. They've bridged a 40-year avionics gap with consumer iPads. They've engineered custom rails to fire top-tier NATO tech like JDAM ears and HARM missiles.
And they're using advanced electronic warfare, the mauled decoys, to turn the skies into a hall of mirrors, confusing Russian radar and creating safe corridors for attack.
All of this creates a strategy of air denial, stopping a mathematically superior air force from gaining control, all while operating from highway strips to survive.
It's a perfect case study in asymmetry. It shows you don't always need the best plane, you need the right system and the right mindset.
It really forces you to rethink the future of military procurement. And that leads me to our final thought for you listening. We typically assume military strength comes from decades of development and trillions of dollars in proprietary closed system hardware. But here we see a commercial tablet and some clever coding bridging a massive technology gap in the middle of a war. So does this suggest that in the future, the most powerful military won't be the one with the most expensive custom hardware, but the one that can most rapidly integrate commercial tech? Is the era of rigid military specification ending in favor of the app-enabled warrior?
It is a question that is undoubtedly keeping procurement officers in the Pentagon and beyond awake at night. The speed of commercial innovation is outpacing military cycles, and Ukraine is proving that speed kills.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.